So, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We do appreciate that you've all had long days doing your childminding. So we do appreciate you coming along tonight. So I'm joined by Rose from my team and June from the funding team. And we're just going to run through the proposed changes for the can't get my words out, that have come into effect from the 1st of September. So thank you, Rose. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We are a relatively small group, so what I would say is just if you want to keep your microphones and cameras off so that we can just make sure that everybody can hear until the QA. However, because we are a relatively small group, if you want to ask a question or pop in, then please turn your camera on or use the function to raise your hand and also the chat function, and we will endeavour to facilitate you coming through. And as I say, we are a relatively small group, so we're open to you coming through on cameras and on the microphone. Please post any questions in the chat if you don't feel confident to come through on a live stream. That's absolutely fine. We have allocated plenty of time for questions and answers at the end of the session, and the session will be recorded and released following tonight. So early next week it will go out for those that are unable to attend. I have to say that we delivered this session on Tuesday, and to be honest with you, I think were completed by 7:30. It's pretty straightforward presentation. We did answer a few questions. However, we did finish at, I think we signed off, at 7:35 at the end. So, hopefully we can get some time back for you. We have allocated the full hour, and we are absolutely wanting you to pose any questions that you might have in regards to the agenda. Next slide, please, Rose. So what we're looking at is we're just going to run through the current process, and we're going to talk about the statutory guidance that has been updated, and then the consultation that took place in regards to the payments and the frequency of payments. The frequency of payments for childminders will change from the 1st of September 2024. So we want to just make sure we heard what people were saying, what childminders were saying to us about the potential impact on their businesses from a change as quickly as the 1st of April 2024. So we postponed the change from to the 1st of September so that we could have this opportunity to have discussion. June is going to go through how payments will be made and to hopefully alleviate any fears. And then we've just slipped a slide in around working families codes. And this is because that June's team have had a number of queries, and we thought this was an ideal opportunity to just clarify. And then we've got any other business, and that should give us a really good piece of time for any questions, which we will hopefully be able to answer. And as I said, Tuesday's night, we finished very, very quickly. So, hopefully we'll get some time back for you guys, because I know how hard you've all been working. Thank you, Rose. Okay, so just a little bit of background for you. So the statutory guidance on early education and childcare that applies from the 1st of April 2024. So there was amendments to the statutory guidance, and that states that the local authority should ensure or pay all providers the full amount owed to them monthly unless they have good reason not to do so. So, for example, if after consultation the clear majority of providers opt for an alternative method of payment, local authorities should be mindful of those concerns of smaller providers, and in particular childminders, about their cash flow when making decisions about payment methods. So this is something that was actually highlighted within the statutory guidance, but it is something that we've been aware of for a little while about the difficulties around the way we pay the early years entitlement. So we have taken these things on board. Thank you, Rose. So currently, the local authority deliver 3 payments for the early years entitlement. An estimate, which is 90% of the claim, is made during the first 2 weeks of the funding period. So essentially that's the term, but because we have childcare that operates all round year provision, we actually look at a funding period, but essentially it is the term plus the holidays either side. And 90% of the funding is paid based on the estimate number of hours and children. We then have a balance element, which is the actual form, which is round about just before half term. Balancing payment is requested, and that's based on the actual claim, and is then paid towards the end or towards the end of the last month of the funding period. So that's that 10% with any adjustment that's made that differs from the estimate to the actual. And then at the end of the funding period, there is opportunity to submit an adjustment, and that's an amendment payment that can be made based on any adjustment claim following that funding period. So if it hasn't come through on the estimate and it hasn't come through on the actual, there's an opportunity to address that issue by detailing the adjustment. Thank you, Rose. Now you'll be pleased to hear that you're not going to hear my voice for the whole of the evening. I'm going to pass across to Rose. Rose sits within my team and is the data sufficiency officer, and she is the person that carries out all of the surveys, analyses the data, and produces the results of those surveys. So over to you. Thank you, Rose.
Thank you. So following the publication of the updated guidance, we sent a consultation to all early years providers, which was open between the 20th of February and the 8th of March. The consultation stated that any decision would be made based on the views of the majority, split by childminders and group providers. So the consultation was to seek views on the way that the estimate payments are made, with no change to how claims are submitted by funding period. So looking specifically at childminders, we received a response from 87% of childminders. From the responses, there was a clear majority preference for monthly payments, with 75% of childminders stating that they would prefer to receive the estimate payments in monthly instalments. The consultation then gave 2 options for how this could be achieved. And again, there was a clear majority of 75% of those childminders that would prefer monthly payments, opting for option 2. So the example on the right-hand side of option 2 was given within the consultation. So here, the claim process by funding period remains the same. The 90% estimate payment is divided by the number of months in the funding period and paid in equal amounts at the beginning of each month, with the balancing payment made separately at the end of the final month as it is now. So therefore, looking back at the guidance, there appeared to be a clear majority of childminders who would prefer to receive the estimate in monthly instalments.
Hello, so I'm June and I'm the entitlements team leader, so I'll just go through the next few slides. And
thank you, Jean. Sorry, I had a bit of trouble turning on then, so I do apologise.
Sorry,
Thank you, Jean.
That's okay. So as Sarah mentioned before, one of the options that we did look at with this was actually putting the change in with effect from the beginning of April, but we'd had quite a lot of feedback from a number of childminders who said that would be too quick to actually turn that round for them. They needed time to get their processes in place to enable them to be set up for monthly, which is why we delayed it until the 1st of September 24. So just turn my camera off. So as Rose has already said, following the views of the majority, all childminders will change to monthly payments, and there will be no change to the current method for submitting an estimate, an actual and an adjustment claim. The only change is how the estimate payment will then be made. So one of the things that we were very aware of is that we don't want to put additional burdens on to anybody in the sector. You know, the process that we've got at the moment, everybody understands pretty much what they need to do, and we didn't want to change that, but there's lots of other changes going on at the moment as it is. So we thought if we did the estimate in the same way, then we will just split that payment then over the appropriate months, and then the actual and the adjustment would be done in exactly the same way, and the payments will then, as I said before, we'll start this process from the 1st of September. Okay, so just go to the next slide, Rose. So the estimate claim will still be submitted for the funding period based on the estimated number of hours and children, and then 90% of it will be split over the funding periods in that month, the number of months in that funding period, sorry. So just to sort of reiterate, I mean, and again, I know you already all know this, but the estimate form doesn't contain any names of children. It just contains numbers. So obviously we don't know which children it is that you're claiming for, which is why it's really important that the actual claim is submitted, because that's the one that actually has the children's details on it. What we will be doing as part of the check is if you claim for a child that is in the 9-month to 2-year-old category, as an example, under the working family criteria on the estimate, we will just be double checking that you've run at least one valid code for that date of birth range on the portal. So it is really important that you just go on and make sure that you run all your working family checks as you are doing at the moment, and just making sure that they are definitely eligible, because we don't want you to be in a situation where you are actually awarding funding and actually they're not eligible yet because the check hasn't been run. Or when you do the check, the dates of birth show that they're not the eligibility dates show they're not entitled. There won't be any change to the actual payment. That will still be made towards the end of the last month of the funding period, and the adjustment will still be sent out once that's been paid, so you can still make any amendments to your claim if you've had people leave or join, or you want to amend any hours that have already been paid for. So that will still be submitted and then paid in exactly the same way as it is at the moment. So it's just the estimate that's changing. So we've got an example here. So the estimates received, the 100% total comes to £1,000. So 90% of that, nice simple maths for a change, is £900. If we then take that 900 and divide it by the 4 months in the autumn funding period, that would then mean that £225 will be paid towards the beginning of each month. When the actual claim is submitted and we total up how much that actually comes to, it comes to a total of £1,100. So what that then means is that we're actually after we've made all of the estimate payments, which total £900 at the beginning of each month, there's actually £200 left still to pay. So that £200 would then be paid at the end of December, as it would have been under the old process. And then the adjustment claims and payments will be done in exactly the same way as they were before. Okay, so payments. So the first monthly payment will be made in the first 2 weeks of the funding period, as it is at the moment. We will try and get them out as soon as we possibly can. It's just capacity in the team. We literally finish processing the actual. We then send out all of the adjustments and all of the paperwork that relates to all of that. We then immediately start processing the estimate payments. So if we can get them done quicker, we will, but we can't guarantee that it will be any quicker. But that's only on the first month. Subsequent months, then the payment will be made before the 5th of each month. Okay. So important information in relation to claims. It's obviously really important that all the submission deadlines are met, and a timeline is sent out, and we send that out. At the moment, we send it at the beginning of September for that current academic year. We've had people come back to us saying actually they'd prefer it to have it a little bit earlier, so we're aiming to send that out before the term finishes in this summer term. So it will come out either the end of June or beginning of July, so that you've got that in advance of the academic year. Then it's a case of all that will have all of the submission dates on there and the dates when payments will be made, and we'll make sure that obviously that includes the revised dates in relation to the monthly payments. If you don't submit claims, then if you don't submit an estimate form, or you submit an estimate form late, then you won't get a monthly payment. Basically, it's as simple as that. If you submit an estimate form late and you want to appeal the decision of not actually getting paid, there is appeal criteria detailed in the provider agreement, and it is really important to understand that you then would need to meet that appeal criteria. That appeal criteria is quite tight because obviously we want everyone to meet their deadlines, and the reason the deadlines are there is that if we don't have them, then we can't get everybody paid by the time that we need to get them all paid by. So it's very important to actually meet them. So an example of the appeal criteria, just so you can see how tight it is if you had a fire in your house, which then meant that you weren't able to submit anything by that particular deadline. It's that sort of thing. If you don't submit your actual, then the monthly payments will stop. So whatever you've been paid will obviously be recorded. It will stop, and then we would, in the same way as we would at the moment, if you don't submit an actual, we'll look to reclaim any money. You can obviously then again contact us and we can talk you through the options in relation to that, so you don't have to repay it, but then you absolutely need to make sure that you submit an adjustment form. If you don't, and then non-submission of adjustment forms, if you've already been paid on your actual and your estimate, then it just means any amendments won't be paid for because you haven't submitted any. If you do submit any adjustments, then obviously we'll process those and pay those, or look at reclaiming money depending on whether it's an increase or a decrease as appropriate. It's really important to make sure that birth certificates are sent in on time as well. And one of the questions that we had from the previous session was from a few childminders who weren't sure if they could actually send more than one birth certificate and child registration form in an email. You can attach as many as you like to an email. That is not a problem at all. So if you want to send, 3 or 4 children and all their details in one email, then by all means do send that. Just make sure that you put on the subject of the email legal documentation, and if you include the names of the children that you're including in that email, and so the documentation should be attached for, if there's anybody missing that you've listed, then we will come back to you and let you know that that isn't there. Okay, in all of these things, if you've got any problems, then please do contact us. Sorry, Sarah.
No, carry on.
Please do contact us. Obviously, contact us before you get to the deadlines, because then we can try and do whatever we can to help and make sure that things are done. Once we get past the deadlines, then we can't really do much about it.
Yeah, so I just stuck my camera on because I think that this is absolutely imperative, as that first line says, that you need to meet the deadlines. June has a very small team and has thousands of claims that need to be processed and adhered to and checked, etc., and then payments made. And I think that's the big message I want to get out to everybody, really, is that we do absolutely appreciate life happens, etc., etc., but actually for us to be able, or for June's team to be able to process and manage the payments and get them out to you on time and effectively, we need your support in ensuring that you're submitting your claims by the submission deadlines. Now, if that's thinking about strategies, how that can work, alarms on your calendars, 5 days before a submission deadline, etc., etc. Any strategies that you have, we would support you in implementing them to make sure that those submission dates are met, because you know it really is difficult, and June and I have a very difficult time sometimes in having to look at appeals which don't meet the criteria, etc., etc. And you know we're not in a place where we don't want to give people money, but we are handling public funds, and we are accountable, and we do have regular audits in regards to how we administer. So you know that's the one thing that I would just, you know, bang on about is please, please, please meet your submission deadlines. And to reiterate, June has a fab team that will be more than willing to help anybody, but don't leave it. Contact them. You know, if you've got a problem, contact them immediately and they will walk it through with you.
Absolutely. And just to say as well, you can submit as many times as you like. So if you know, when the task comes out, if you think, right, I think I know what I want to claim, I'm just going to submit this now, submit it. If it then changes before the deadline, you can go in and amend it and resubmit again. It's not a problem at all. We will always take the last submission that you do, but it's obviously better to get something in than nothing at all. Okay.
Just before we move on, June, has anybody got any questions or queries? They're very welcome to come on camera and ask, or pop in the chat in regards to those elements that we've discussed already. And there's the silence. So we'll move on, if we may. June,
Okay.
back to you.
Yeah. So working family codes. So eligible families need to apply during the funding period before they want to use their codes. So they need to make sure that they've applied by the 31st of March if they want to use their code from the 1st of April, the 31st of August if they want to use it from the 1st of September, and the 31st of December if they want to use it by the 1st of January. When you then verify those codes on the portal, and you must make sure that you verify them, so every setting needs to verify the codes for any children they want to claim for, then you need to just make sure that you check those dates and make sure that the code start date is before the funding period that you want to use it in. And that's really important because we get so many people contacting us where the family hasn't actually got their code until the beginning of the funding period they want to use it for, and that means that code unfortunately is not entitled, and they then have to wait until the next funding period. And I'm sure, again, you've probably all heard about things like this. Then the parent hasn't reconfirmed, which then means they're in their grace period, which because they haven't used their code, it's not valid, and it just goes on. So it is really important that parents actually apply for their codes in time. We would recommend that they apply for them during July and August, because then if they get their code, they should then be valid for the beginning of September. And then as soon as you get the code, just make sure that you go on and verify it on the early years portal. It is the parent's responsibility to ensure that they reconfirm their code. It isn't you as a provider, your responsibility to make sure that they do that. That is their responsibility. They do get reminded by HMRC that they need to go on and do that. If you as a provider want to take that on and remind them, that is obviously up to you, but it's just to make sure that you're aware it is the parent's responsibility to ensure they do that. And once a family has been awarded a working families code, so if you've got a family with a child that's at 9 months old or a year old, and they've gone on, they've got their code, as long as the parent reconfirms on time, the code will not change until they go to school. So they won't be getting a new code when they turn 2 and then another new code when they turn 3. The parent just needs to go on, reconfirm every 3 months or however long it says for that particular parent, and that code will then remain eligible as long as they meet the criteria all the way through until they go to school. We've had quite a few inquiries from a number of different settings who think that a parent will get a new code when they become 2 and then another new code again when they become 3. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that that isn't the case. It will be the same code all the way through.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you, June. So as I said, Tuesday's evening went very, very quickly and was very, very short. but we did allow the hour to enable any questions or answers. We are now at 7:25 and actually have finished the presentation that we had put forward. So it is absolutely open to you guys to ask any questions.